Should we judge somebody before they've had a trial? Should we give somebody the benefit of the doubt? Well, yes, we should under normal circumstances, but when they are a minister of the crown, when we are supposed to trust them, then they should be above basic suspicion. And if the suspicion is simply piling on, they should do the honourable thing and step aside. And when they don't, they should be pushed. It's very simple. It's very simple. We have so much evidence of what Prince Harry, I mean, let's stick to literature, of what Prince Harry calls bold Machiavellian manoeuvres. He was referring to the bee, the wasp, and the fly. I disliked those men, he said. And I can understand why, and it's not so difficult to identify who they are. But those bold Machiavellian manoeuvres seem to be used all over Whitehall. And all you have to do is look at the man who winked in public. Winked in public? Who winks in public? Well, Dominic Raab. Dominic Raab is the famous winker. The man who winked in public across the dispatch box and thought he'd get away with it. This is a man who seems to condescend for a living. And now there are 24 people prepared to put their name to a complaint, or 24 individual complaints, or 24 complainants who are tied up in 8 specific instances of complaint. And there are many more, apparently, who are too terrified of the consequences of putting their name forward. So this is a man who has headed 3 ministries. Exiting Europe, the Justice Ministry, and the Foreign Office, now Deputy Prime Minister. And in each of the 3 ministries that he's headed, he has apparently been given warnings by the top civil servants, which had no impact. He has been alleged often to have belittled staff. He calls it being tough, having high standards. What we're told is that he said, get my effing car, and was heard to say, get my effing car, at the end of a television programme where he was annoyed. So he's annoyed, so he takes it out on the staff, he takes it out on the waiter. He's rude to the subordinates, the assistant getting the car. He's made people apparently, allegedly, physically sick, reduced to tears, left feeling suicidal. And why would you go to work to feel suicidal, to vomit, to be winked at? Simon MacDonald was asked whether he thought it was plausible that Raab could be a bully. This was just after the story became public in November. And he said yes, on the Andrew Marr show. He said yes, it was plausible. Then went on to say that he was a tough boss. So plausible, but could be misinterpreted. You could be misinterpreting toughness as bullying. But bullying is in the eye of the beholder. Bullying is an experience that you have. It's not what's intended, it's how it's perceived. And Mr. Sunak. Mr. Sunak, in contrast to all of these allegations which were circulating around almost certainly before he appointed Mr. Raab as Deputy Prime Minister, and we know that Simon Case had been informed about these allegations. So Simon Case either didn't tell his boss, so in other words, he's not very good at his job, or he didn't tell his job to shield his boss from what he knew his boss was going to do, so he's a bit compromised, or he told his boss, and his boss either didn't care, didn't remember, or wasn't interested, or forgot, or... However you look at this, Case or Sunak are implicated. They are complicit in a cover-up of potential bullying. Whether Raab is a bully or not, people have been upset. People have perceived bullying. So people have been miserable working in government departments, and it doesn't matter really whether Raab was responsible for this or not. Why did nobody step in and try and make life better? Is it so unpleasant working for the government? Anyway, Rishi Sunak says there's no documentation. He says he wasn't presented with any documentation formally. And he stuck to this. I don't recognise the characterisation of Dominic's behaviour. He's very specific about this, using the first name, Dominic, and the characterisation of Dominic's behaviour. So one could say that maybe Dominic had a bad day and maybe somebody was offended by that. Oh, so that's not necessarily bullying, is it? That's not a bully, that's just a bad day. Let's explain it away. Or one could say, I don't recognise it, so therefore it doesn't exist. This is somebody else's perception, not mine. That's also a get-out clause. And Nadine Dorries has just offered another get-out clause. Dominic should stand aside and defend himself. Should step away from the job he's doing and get on with refuting these baseless allegations. And I'm sure he'll take a very tough line on those people who have made those baseless allegations, because, of course, he now has the list. He now has the names of those people who have stood up and been brave enough to put their names to allegations that will become public. It's shocking at the heart of government, where we are trying to put forward an idea that bullying is not an acceptable way to behave in the workplace or in the school. This is the example we give. You know, at the first whiff that people are miserable, we should try and make them happier. We should try and accommodate them. We should try to solve the problems if we can't get rid of one particular person, if indeed their perception is false. What have we done to help them? It appears, in this particular case, the government has done nothing. Now, I personally have my own suspicions about where this is going to end. I don't necessarily wish to prejudge. I agree with Nadine Dorries for once. Raab should step aside. But I think he should have stepped aside long ago. And the longer he remains in position, the more damage he does to his boss, and the more damage he does to those around him. So I think it's almost certain that not only will Raab have to go, but Case will also have to go, and Sunak will have great difficulty hanging on. Great difficulty. If Sunak goes, I think it's very, very unlikely that the Conservative Party can remain in power. And maybe people like Nadine Dorries might reflect on that. I know she doesn't really like Sunak's tenure, and I know she has these fantasies of having Boris back in his position. That won't happen. That will not happen. That is one fantasy too far, even for La Dorries.